All right, what is going on, ladies and gentlemen? How is it going? I am Is There No One Else? And today's video, I put in a poll asking for your guys' thoughts on this. I was watching this Nefas video last night. It's titled "The Brutality and Hypocrisy of Toxic Casuals in ESO and How They're Winning." And it got a lot of views rather quickly. Like the title caught me. I watched the first, full disclosure, I watched the first 5-ish minutes. And I started to realize that this was touching on a topic that I wanted to discuss. And so, full disclosure, I have not posted my video yet. I didn't want to like tread on what he was talking about. And so far, 5 minutes in, it's good. I've had this retweeted in my Discord and in other Discords a few times. And so I think this is going to be a good watch for you guys. I'll provide a link in the description so you guys don't have to hear my voice. You can just listen to Nefas. But yeah, we're just going to get this video out there further as per the request of the community. And then I will continue to do my video, which will probably, I don't know for sure, there's still 27 minutes to this video, but there will probably be quite a few points that he makes in here that will probably apply to that video as well. So yeah, let's dive into it. Let's go back to the beginning.
Quick disclaimer before the actual video. Please, for the love of any god out there, do not comment before you fully watch this video.
Uh-oh.
Don't leave a first comment either, because that should kind of stop being funny in 2008 when your father stopped loving you.
But I was
If
first.
you're one of the idiots I described in this video, please, I'm fucking begging you, block my channel, unsubscribe, mute, anything, and just move on. Just go away. I don't want you ever here no matter what, because I or anyone else will never ever be able to change your mind about a lot of the things I'm going to talk about in the video.
I'm so
fine
excited.
if you disagree and can be civil about it, but for the majority of these idiots in my YouTube comment sections, it just devolves into stupid and irrelevant shit, so I'm just going to delete your waste of a comment if you do post it. But I do hope that many of you will actually watch this, and perhaps it will give you a new perspective on the subject matter I chose to cover and the underlying theme of toxic casuals that I had to tread carefully around in the past in previous videos, such as why can't you find tanks in ESO, the social problems in ESO, the history of feedback groups in ESO, even guides where we discuss raid compositions and optimizations for ESO. And you know, this thread of toxic casuals as a theme runs in other content creator videos as well if you pay close attention, such as dottzgaming's gaslighting of the PvP community, or the toxic positivity videos by sawmanuk. This video is going to be not just a resource for other community leaders like me, an exposition in regards to the massive problem the ESO community is infested with, but also my personal dialogue and connecting with other rational human beings out there on potential solutions to this problem, along with the nature of said problem, and that problem is the toxic casuals. This video will include the definition, history, examples, and of course specific messages to specific groups as a closing to the year 2021.
Okay, so a couple things. He told us to not comment on this video until the end, and I'm doing a reaction video during it. So this could get quite spicy rather quickly. So I'm looking forward to that. I did listen to you, Nefas. I did listen to you, but we're going to do it anyways because it'll be funny. Number two, he's basically like creating the lore of the toxic casual. Can we petition ZeniMax to create this as a new race in ESO? Can like we have an ESO race called toxic casuals, and like they get introduced, because like we're gonna have their entire backstory here. Yeah, let's go.
What is
I haven't seen that name in forever.
Casual? Well, we all know what a toxic elitist is, or is apparently supposed to be. Many would define the trope of a toxic elitist to be some sort of gatekeeping individual who berates newer or less experienced players who stroke their egos in order to compensate for being some sort of gaming geek.
Sure.
Someone who, at least within the context of ESO, tries to force the evil meta or best in slot concepts upon the pure-hearted Skyrim generation of ESO casual players, no matter the setting, whether it's normal dungeon or a veteran trial. So what is a toxic casual? Interestingly, the concept or various definitions of a toxic casual
I never heard of
isn't
this term
just in
before.
ESO, it's also present in other MMOs such as World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy XIV, and yes, even Guild Wars.
And this is why people are very, very aggressive with each other as well. And I think with Guild Wars 2, there is the added element that you have something very, very interesting, which isn't just casual players, you have very toxic casual players, right? You have a lot of very entitled players. And this is cultured from the game itself. Like the
Yeah.
game does not require you to really put in any effort to get any of the rewards. Okay, that is to say, even if you are literally the worst player ever and you only auto attack, you'll get all the legendaries, pretty much no problem, right? Not exactly the hardest thing in the universe. So when something like a raid comes along or a challenge mode and you can't get that reward anymore, you're upset, you're mad, you're entitled, right? Because you don't want to get good. You don't want to have to know what your ability. You don't want to read tooltips. What's reading? I don't. You did all that at school. What the hell is that? I don't want to do reading anymore, right?
I
And
have my 9
so you
jobs and my 15 children to worry
exactly.
about.
You get mad. I don't want to have to interact with another human being in my massively multiplayer online game.
Okay, sorry. I have to mention this when we go back. So Nefas mentioned a few other videos. Yeah, he mentioned Sawman's video early on. He mentioned Dot's video. I could provide a link to those two as well if you guys want to check those out. But I'll give you guys an inside scoop. When you do a video like this with a 2-minute disclaimer, it's because you've had to deal with the bullshit before. As a content creator, I can't tell you how many times like I've done a video and people are like, dude, why are you doing this long intro? This intro's so boring. And it's because I don't want to have to deal with the comments that come from just not doing that. It weeds out so much stuff. Like sometimes it should be a given. Like this should be a given that this is Nefas's opinion. He shouldn't have to provide a disclaimer, yet he does. In Dots' video, he's like, hey, listen to me the entire way out before you comment on this, because people don't listen to the whole video. They just hear a snippet and they comment. And they get upset and you read it and you're like, this doesn't make any sense because that's not part of the video. And so you're angry at something that never happened. And so I wanted to comment on that really quick because I forgot. But yeah, I think even Sawman provided a disclaimer in one of his videos. Guys, you know it's bad when Sawman UK is providing a disclaimer in his video. Like even he had to be like, you know what? I know I do mostly meme and joke videos, but let me get serious here really quick and explain to you. Like, that's fucking ridiculous. Sorry, let's go on.
I don't want to do that. And it's the same thing with PvP, of course, right? I don't want to have to fight other players. This is ridiculous. They should put this in open world PvE as well. And obviously this is insane, right? Like these people are idiots. They want to devalue and remove any kind of value with any reward or anything within the game and just kind of put it into a giant mush where it doesn't matter what you've done, everything is irrelevant and nothing matters, which would just be a terrible game.
Yeah.
But that's what people want. Not very vocal minority.
While perhaps there may be similar elements in what was just described by Miney Teapot, I'll draw distinctions between his definition and the ESO definition, as Guild Wars and ESO are, after all, two very different games with two very different player bases. By definition, an ESO toxic casual is an individual part of the demographic majority in ESO, hence casual, an individual who attacks or scapegoats minority demographics in ESO, an individual who claims such actions are in the best interest of the community, an individual who effectively uses double standards, lack of understanding, and hypocrisy to undermine minority demographics.
Yeah.
And lastly, a toxic casual is an individual who actually does gatekeep other casual players.
Yep.
While
100%.
some other games may see the toxic casual as a vocal minority, as said by Miney Teapot, in ESO it is quite unfortunately a large part of the majority of the population. I've gone over the history of why this is in previous videos, but for your sake, let's just go over it again. If we could choose a historical focal point in which mass sentiment turned aggressively against this perception of elitism, or toxicity, or endgame players in general, it would be Entropy Rising, the guild representation of the former Tamriel Foundry website, which many players accuse of getting special treatment with the developers. After this, throughout 2015 and well into 2016, the available mediums of communication, including the ESO subreddit, the official ESO forums, and yes, Facebook, became flooded with general mistrust and misinformation regarding all kinds of things in ESO, from stats to builds, especially when it came to tackling harder content such as mob lorcage.
Yes.
This was also largely in part due to the wildfire mantra of play how you want, which, by the way, originally comes from the back cover of ESO's first CD case, Play the Way You Like. And as play how you want was officially acknowledged by the devs in some capacity and continues to be so as an attractive characteristic of ESO, well, of course, it was natural for a lot of people to start scapegoating concepts like meta, or best in slot, or communities that enjoyed, ironically enough, optimizing because that's how they wanted to play. The pushback against perceived toxic elitism, where there weren't any, became so fierce that the movement of player culture and ideas itself in ESO became so toxic to the point that if you're an endgame PvPer or an endgame PvEer, you must be cheating, you must be hacking, you must be toxic, you must be racist, you must be sexist, you must be everything no one wants to be. Indeed, this is one of the main tactics toxic casuals are using to win even right now. I mean, after all, who will be willing to listen to you, much less join you in your preferred activities if you can't even be part of the conversation to begin with? This is also a shame because endgame players don't pop out of nowhere.
Yeah, I completely agree with this so far. I haven't commented much. I haven't reacted much in a reaction video because I didn't get this far in the video before, and he's 100% right so far. There's so many instances of, if you go on Facebook, just misinformation from people. They're like, are you really going to believe the game? You go on YouTube, you see the same thing where people are like, they're talking about different stats and like, yeah, this is how everybody else got this wrong. And you hear these things and it's like this is the stuff the developers don't want you to know about. And it's basically, like Nefas says here, you have people gatekeeping information or claiming to gatekeep information. You're like, hey, don't listen to these people because they're this and because they're that makes them evil people. Listen to me because I'm not evil. and yeah, it's just, yeah, let's just continue.
Casuals too, ones who were role players, were people who quested, we just simply went a different path. And of course, with such a huge pushback, I mean, what can you expect? If you're called toxic already, why not be toxic? Or perhaps you just don't give a damn anymore and you don't put effort into building some semblance of a community. And there's plenty of examples for this in both PvE and PvP throughout the years since 2016. Correct. But I digress. Continuing with the history, slogans that are common in many places, such as the meta is toxic, elitists are ruining the game, turn into active suppression or dismissal of information, such as mathematical formulas that determine things such as damage, healing, and many other things. It didn't matter what the facts were, what the math proved about certain such, or so on. All of it was toxic. Numbers were toxic. Math was toxic. Daring to think of optimizing is toxic. Competency became toxic. Trying to score push is toxic. Wanting to play how you want became toxic, unless it wasn't meta. I'm sure all of you have seen this or experienced this to a degree. But anyway, it was all dismissed or actively attacked. It still is. Were it not for the few individuals and groups that persisted, we would not have had the foundations for an ESO University website or some of the largest raiding guilds today. In terms of scapegoating, with how few actual endgame players there were and are across every platform and server, the need for being outraged on the internet and being self-validated fun-filled stories, or perhaps the encounters themselves of players getting kicked from dungeon groups, or being told what to run, or being called slurs or names by other players. Of course, you know.
Okay, so we're going to comment on a few of these things because I have some examples of this. I started my YouTube channel because I had friends asking me for builds, and they were asking me for CP layout, food, enchants, whatever. And I was giving, I was sharing my builds and I was talking to people. And after a while, I started to realize that it's just easier to make a video, and then they can go back and look at it if they mess something up and whatever. And so I started making videos for that reason, to help out my friends and to help out people in a few of the guilds that I was in. And that's been the entire point of my channel, is to get the right information. And I've been wrong on stuff in the past, guys. Like, I've been wrong on things. I've got vigor math wrong. I can't tell you how many times. It still like just keeps me up at night. No, it doesn't. But I get stuff wrong, and I go back and I either delete the video and I say, hey, I got something wrong in this video. It's a little bit too much misinformation. My bad. And it's funny because I was streaming quite a bit last year, but I haven't really streamed this year, mostly due to performance. But every once in a while when I was on stream, people are like, hey man, like, what are you running? They ask for your build. That's one of the first things they ask for, because they want to see your success. And I had a few people comment more than once on my Twitch streams, like, dude, do you actually run what you say you're running? Like, what you post on your channel is what you run in PvP? I'm like, yeah, man, like that's why it's posted. And they're like, oh, I thought you just like posted stuff and then you keep your secret builds for your 1vx clips. And this stuff happens a lot, guys. Like, I get comments on my channel about combo scripts on Xbox. I've gotten comments about how I'm a top PC player that uses cheat scripts on PC. I hopped on PC for the first time in a year, like a couple weeks ago. In my Discord, I have the title top PC player. It's just a joke, but I think it's hilarious. Because, yeah, you have people that think like, oh, yeah, this guy used add-ons, he's a cheater. And then I get called a cheater for using combo scripts or whatever, or for wiring a controller. And it's, I don't know, man. Like, you get this stuff all the time with people questioning your build, questioning how you're able to do what you do. And it's always comes, in my opinion, from the same source. People in this game think, and I've said this a lot, but people in this game, everybody seems to think that they're the best. And if somebody does something better, the only way that they could be better is because they cheated. And so that's what people jump to. They're using broken builds. They're using this. They're using this. And it's crazy because, like, I've never gotten most of my comments, like in my personal messages on Xbox, are really nice. But every once in a while, you get stuff on a channel where people are like, oh, yeah, you're just cheating here. You're using friggin' wall hacks and whatever garbage friggin' thing is coming out. And it's like, dude, where is this coming from? This just doesn't even make any sense. But yeah, I am a YouTuber and I'm a content creator, and I'm an elitist for a lot of reasons. And we'll share some more later.
The blame shifted to the in-game players. It still does. Oh, it must be those top leaderboard score raters who queued in a random normal dungeon just to vote kick me. Oh, it must be those trials players who called my mother a whore. Perhaps some of you watching this video may even think they were or are indeed in-game players, but let me break the news to you. In-game players do not give a shit about you. We don't care what sets you run. We don't care what you do with your friends. We don't care what you had for breakfast, much less what you're running on your hybrid sorcerer DPS tank build in no armor. More power to you. We just don't give a shit. And no real endgame player wastes time gatekeeping or putting down your players, because guess what? We need more players.
What a quote.
All this blame fed into putting down your
Sorry. This is really true. The most toxic people I've ever encountered are the people who think they're good, but are not. These are the real issue. I don't know how many of you have played with members of top raid groups, but they're oftentimes very kind, very helpful, and frankly, they don't say much. The most toxic people can be found in Dungeon Fighter. They do good damage, die to mechanics, and blame the healer. They're pugs from Craiglorn who joined your impromptu NHO NHOF run. Yeah, I agree. the most toxic people I've experienced, yeah, I've been in normal dungeons. I don't do a lot of endgame raiding and whatnot, but the most toxic people I've met in PvP, frankly, are not very good. Like, I can think of a few instances that they're just like they run in large groups, they have lots of AP, and then they talk shit. That's just what it is, and it's fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. But yeah, like, there's so many tiers in this game. People look and they see somebody with max level and they're like, oh, that's an end game player. And there's just so much more to it than that. I wanted to provide an example just off of this, but it was a few years ago now. Vetmov Lorcage, me and my buddies were getting a group together to do progression runs. And so this is before we had trial dummies. This is way back in my day. We had trial dummy. We had the old blood spawn DPS test, right? Blood spawn DPS test. If you guys know what it is, comment in the comment section below. I'd love to know how many of you guys have been around for that long. But long story short, you go to blood spawn and you parse blood spawn to see what your damage is, because yeah, we didn't have houses and practice dummies back then. And so you had to get it completed in a certain time. And if you did, it was good. And so we were all working towards it. Like, all of us were trying to get the moss skin because it was the coolest thing. It was tough content, like tough content. Like, it was tough at the time. It was challenging. It was a reward. Getting the moss skin was a big deal. If you got it legitimately, it was a very big deal. Like, it was something to be proud of. And so we wanted that accomplishment. And so we're working towards it, and like all of our friends are resetting the blood spawn dungeon over and over again to parse and practice and work on our rotation and everything. And yeah, we're doing that. And we're trying to figure stuff out. And so we do a couple progression runs. We go in and we just can't get past the twins. We can't get past the first boss. And it's so freaking frustrating, man. It's so frustrating because we're there for like 3-4 hours and nothing's happening, and it's not getting any better. And we're getting the placements laid out. We have everybody set up the proper way. And you have some people that just aren't listening, right? They're just not listening. They're like, yeah, I got it. I know what I'm doing, guys. I know what I'm doing. And so I'm going to mess this up, but it's the first boss in Ma, when he goes into the pulsar phase, whatever the fuck that's called. I'm sorry. It's been years since I've been in there. He goes into that phase. And so the healers have to do some heavy lifting at that point, right? And the DPS has to burn him down before everybody dies. Well, the problem we had was, for the first 3 hours, the healer was using healing springs to keep people alive, but he wasn't putting them underneath himself. And so he wasn't healing himself, he was healing everybody else. And predictably, because he wasn't healing himself, he was dying. And he was dying really freaking quickly. And so he would die within the first 3 seconds of that phase. And then we would wipe because one healer couldn't keep everybody alive. And we're like, dude, what's going on? He's like, dude, bro, I know what I'm doing. I know how to heal. I've been healing for forever. And was like literally talking like very defensive, very aggressive. Like, why are you questioning what I'm doing? It's like, dude, you're dying in 10 seconds. You're doing something wrong. And after a couple hours, we figured out he wasn't healing himself. Like, he wasn't underneath his own healing springs. And that's why he was dying. And that's why everybody else was dying and why we were missing a healer. We got past that after the first couple of hours. But we didn't have enough DPS. We didn't have enough DPS to do it. So we went back and we did it a couple different days. Probably spent 10, 12, 16 hours doing a progression in a mod at this point. And we just couldn't get past that first boss. And we realized that we needed to do full DPS tests for everybody. Because at that point, like, you actually needed pretty decent DPS. Like, it wasn't just like everybody, you can light attack your way through content. You actually needed a certain amount in order to get there. And so we started doing parses. And there's one guy, I'm not going to name names, a few people will know him. He got really mad that we asked him to parse. Like, dude, I can't believe you asked this to me. All I do is PvE. Test everybody else. You don't need me to test. I'm like, dude, everybody's doing it. Just parse, right? If I remember correctly, a good blood spawn parse was like a minute 30, 2 minutes. It was something like that. I could be wrong. I don't remember the exact number, but at that point in time, I want to say it was like a minute or two. My buddy shut off the timer at 6 minutes. Like he was at 6 minutes. The guy had like 30 or 40% of the blood spawn boss left, and it just wasn't even close. And he's like, dude, you got to work on your parses. Like you need to get your damage up. We're not going to be able to complete the content with your current DPS, which was 100% true. We're all new. We all need a certain amount of, like, you need a certain amount of DPS. It was just true. And it wasn't kicking him out. It was saying, you got to work on this, man. Like, you got to get better. When you get better, we'll get you back in on a run. And he got pissed. And he got really upset. Basically called us all, a bunch of assholes. We're a bunch of dicks. Literally keeping him out for some unspecified reason. We're selfish. He's a way better player than we are, and all these other things, and ran it off and created his own guild, which is fine. But you see this stuff where just people are unable to take criticism, and they do this lash out mechanic. They just lash out and they say, no, this is fucking bullshit. And you see it all the time in that in-between group. Like, the people that think they're kind of good and have something to prove. Because the people that are really good at anything, they don't give a shit, man. Like, they just don't give a shit. One more analogy and we'll go back into this video because I don't want to make this like 2 hours long. But I've played a lot of poker and I've done a lot of poker learning where you watch videos and participate on forums and everything. And there was a poker forum that I visited that had it separated by stake levels. So low stakes, small stakes, like penny, 50-cent tables, whatever. Medium stakes, your $100, couple $1,000 tables, and then your high stake, like 40,000, 6-figure, 7-figure tables. Because depending on your level, you might need get different answers for the games you're playing at because people are functioning at different levels in those games. And the most amount of toxicity that came out of those forums was not the beginner forums. It was not the elite forums. It was the mid-tier forums. And the reason it was is you had a bunch of people wanting to get to the next level. They were working hard and they wanted to be that good. And they weren't there yet. And there was that sense like they hadn't accomplished what they went out to accomplish. Like, they hadn't done what other people did. And so they were very quick to be like, this person's wrong. This person's an idiot. I'm smart. I'm better. I'm whatever. And that's where the most amount of just like toxic comments came from, was the middle tier. And it was funny because like you'd see a few of those people go up to the upper tier videos to comment, and they would try the same thing with the players that are literally making millions of dollars a month. And the guys just looked at him and like, hey man, you're entitled to do what you want. I don't give a shit. I told you my opinion. Like, they don't care if you want to make mistakes at a poker table. If you want to make mistakes and make them money making those mistakes at their table, you do what you want to do. Like, you go right ahead. They didn't give a shit. They're like, dude, made $10 million this year. I don't care what you do. I'm just providing my opinion. And yeah, I think that could be said for content in ESO as well.
Players, because guess what? We need more players. And all this blame fed into this cycle of, well, we're not going to say anything and tell people what to do or maybe even teach them. And that fed into the next step of, well, why aren't these guys teaching? They're toxic. They're gatekeeping. Well, if we say something, you'll call us toxic anyway. And this was a real, and still is a real experience. That's why most people, when they end up in pugs or what, they don't say anything. Until
100%.
They're asked for it. And very rarely do people ask for help. So if you're wondering why some in-game players are hesitant in giving you advice, well, that's because we were called toxic for giving advice.
Correct.
The number of times I've been told, or even experienced myself, these toxic elitists in random groups, is that all the time, they were literally no-name players no one's ever heard of. For example, I had a player who was doing a rather poor 20% of the group DPS compared to my 80%, but still name-calling this new tank and trying to vote-kick the tank for dying in Vet Frostfall. Was that an in-game player? No. But the blame shifts to us because it's easier to not think. And it's easier to scapegoat. In fact, for most of us, and I don't know if people even realize this, but the experience of toxicity actually isn't at the in-game level. It's on the way there. I don't know why that is. I don't know why these average shitters who don't know anything about the game are toxic to other people, but that's been the case for a very long time. And
I'm sorry, Nefas.
In other games. And the endgame communities in ESO have suffered for it. Now that we've kind of caught up on the
This is why he said to wait,
toxic casual,
so
and
that
how
you don't do what I
affected
just did.
the smaller communities,
Oh,
let's
that's
discuss
funny.
an example of attacking and scapegoating. A key example of attacking and scapegoating minority groups, such as endgame players, is of course Mystic's MMOs.
Correct.
Many of you in the endgame community often laugh at him, or are amused by him, but his ideas, his rants, and ideologies are not unique to him, and
Correct.
are actually quite common in much of the ESO player base. The demonization of endgame players, the claims of being bullied despite, striking first, the false logic claims of being correct on incorrect things, and the refusal to recognize nuance or rational thought in favor of safeguarding this amorphous concept of community is everywhere, from Twitter to in-game zone chat. This
Yep.
brings us to the next characteristic of the toxic casual.
Okay, before we get to that, I'm sorry, Nefas. I didn't know that was part of your video. I'm really sorry. But he's right. I obviously completely agree that the middle tier is where you get most of the toxicity. I wasn't expecting a Mystic reference in this video. I really wasn't. I mean, he was subtly referencing it along the way, or even if he wasn't subtly referencing it, it just applied. But yeah, Mystic, yeah, like he's completely right here. And it's interesting because, and I'm not mad. I'm not blaming a victim or anything like that, or because I'm not Mystic in this case. But when you title videos and you call people morons, or you say that they're slow, or you say that they're idiots, and it happens a lot, specifically with Mystic, and it's not to me. Like, he has called me a moron because, I don't run Nernhoned on my body pieces. That's a different story. But he's called Skinny Cheeks a moron and slow and all these other sorts of things. And you have people that like Skinny Cheeks. His community likes Skinny Cheeks because he provides content. He provides good content. It's good information and it's helpful. And there's a point in time in this game where good, helpful information helps you complete content, because we're all progressing on this skill level scale, right? Like CP, skill level, all these other sorts of things. And sometimes just a little bit of help allows us to complete something that we couldn't complete before. The goal isn't to be the best player for all of us. The goal is to just complete content we never completed before, maybe be a better version of ourselves, right? And I was talking to one of my buddies about this last night. We were talking about back during the Vet Maelstrom Arena and Maw of Lorcage days and stuff like that, because that content at the time when it came out was actually very difficult. I remember there was a point where I was on my Magicka Nightblade and I was trying to beat Maelstrom Arena, and I'd already beaten it on like 3 or 4 other characters, but I was really, really struggling on my Magblade. And I went to a video of a guy doing high score runs, and I was looking, he did his build and he did his CP layout, and I realized that my CP layout wasn't the same as his. I was putting points in recovery and not reduced cost at that point. And reduced cost was, I didn't know this at the time, but it was miles better for sustain. They actually removed reduced cost from the CP tree because it was that good. But I put the points out of my recovery into reduced cost, and I was all of a sudden able to sustain so much better, like infinitely better. I was able to add 1 or 2 spell damage enchants, and I had so much more damage. I was killing things before it could kill me. I didn't have to heal as much. I was just burning through everything, and I completed the content because of 1 CP change. Now keep in mind, I was like 250, 270 CP at this point. Very, very small. And this is CP 1.0, where it was scaling a lot more than it does now. And so that content was quite difficult. And if it wasn't for that video with that CP layout, I would have struggled for a very, very long time on that. It could have taken me months potentially. I mean, maybe that's an exaggeration. But it could have taken me a couple more days to complete that content. But that help got me there. Now the problem is a lot of the current content outside of like hard modes and stuff, it's pretty easy. You don't need endgame stuff. You don't need endgame content or endgame gear to complete most dungeons, most situations, even most hard mode dungeons. You don't need endgame gear for that. So a lot of that, those little nitpick things aren't as valuable, but that's for an endgame player like myself. It's not needed for me. But if I was like 200 or 300 CP and if I had the skill level I had at that point, I would really value good information. And yeah, because it provides more joy. And so when people are providing misinformation and they're calling other people idiots and then they're toxic about it and you get called out for it, and then you play the you know, you play the victim, like, oh, people are attacking me. No, you're not being attacked. You're not getting attacked in this situation. You asked for it. You asked for comment, for people to, you created a situation and now you have to live with that situation. And now you got to pretend like, oh yeah, I didn't do this. This didn't happen to me. It's a weird concept. And yeah, honestly, I just think Mystic is trying to do a speed run for logical fallacies. Like, I just think every single argumentative fallacy you could come up with, I think he just tries to go through them all in any debate that he tries to get through, because none of it makes any sense. It doesn't apply. He just shifts goalposts. He says, because you don't know this, you're this. And yeah, it's just like that. He's the perfect example of what happens a lot. And the only difference is really is he's got a channel, and most other people that are similar to him do not.
Community. How do politicians or anyone who wants their way within a public setting gather support? You get sympathy. You get people to empathize with your cause or make them think what you want is in their best interest. It's the same with toxic casuals. Anytime they're crusading against something they absolutely hate, whether it's fake tanking, raid requirements, or even PvP as a game mode, they always bring up community. They always bring up new players. Why? Well, it's very hard for anyone to say, fuck the new players. If you do that, you're an asshole.
Correct.
If you go against the wishes of the majority or the community, well, then you're an outlier. You're a piece of shit vagabond who has absolutely nothing to offer to the betterment of the community. It's basic human manipulation at its core. So what ends up happening is that whenever you bring up a topic like DPS numbers or getting a title or some innocuous thing, you get called an elitist. You get called a gatekeeper. You're demeaned as someone who doesn't give a shit about newer players, and so you don't care about helping others.
Correct.
I've had people come to me and tell me they don't want to try raiding because they might be seen as different by their social circle. That's truly fucked up and shows how effective this tactic has been throughout the years up until this point. This doesn't just occur in PvE instances as well, in terms of scapegoating or shifting the blame. It's also in PvP, where endgame PvPers have either left the game or aren't doing much anymore, but yet are still called toxic or blamed for things like changes to the game because some no-name average PvPers keep stream sniping, saying stupid shit in zone chat, or impersonating actual endgame PvPers like my friend Xplaniside to act toxic. Whenever a person defends their shitty actions or words with the banner of community, that's a huge red flag they're carrying. They don't give a shit about the community. These toxic casuals don't give a shit about you. They don't give a shit about anyone else except themselves and their own convenience. Now, moving on to the next character.
Okay. All right, we got to talk a little bit about this one because PvP toxicity is my wheelhouse. Yeah, I'm going to do a video going a little bit more in depth about this, but I wanted to talk about a few other things here. I can always tell on my channel when one of my videos gets shared on the forums. I can always tell. And the reason I can tell is it's a type of comment coming from people I've never seen before. Now, I read most of the comments in my videos. I try to. Sometimes like they don't pop up or whatever, but I really try to read and respond to most comments. But like I'll wake up one morning after posting a video the day before and I'll wake up to like 6 or 7 comments like, wow, this is really like, it's always the same thing. And it's clearly somebody that didn't watch the video. They got a link to it with some sort of like modifier of people talking about something, because people will use my videos to like push their own agenda. So I'll do a video talking about a set or whatever, and people will then use that to push their own agenda about why this class is busted or why this is busted. And so then I find myself responding in these well, I used to respond in these forum threads like, dude, that's not what I said in my video. I didn't say this. Like, this isn't part of the video. I'm just talking about the specific skill or this ability or the set or whatever. But I can always tell. And like, and a lot of that is just, yeah, there's a certain portion of the community that very, like, it's a lose-lose situation, right? If you share information, you're toxic and you're making the PvP community worse. How many times have you heard this? If you share builds and the builds are strong, you're ruining the PvP experience. If you don't share builds, you're an elitist who's keeping the good stuff to yourself. Like, there's really no way to win with these types of people. And so I realized a long time ago, like, screw those guys. It just doesn't matter. And I will just troll them endlessly in my comments. So if you guys see me trolling somebody, it's because there's probably history there, or because, like, I felt like it. My default, on my channel is nice. I try to help. I try to be constructive. But if you come on and comment on a video that about something that the video doesn't cover, or you try to twist it, I'm inclined to make fun of you for it. That's just what I'm going to do, because I just have no tolerance for those types of players anymore. I have no tolerance for those types of people. If you want to listen to the entire thing, and if you disagree and there's a good disagreement and it actually applies, sure, we can have a discussion. But if you're just there to troll, I will troll right back. And I can assure you, I'm better than you at it. I'm way, way better than you at it. So feel free, go for it. Yeah. But anyways, back to this video is, it's 100% true that this happens in PvP all the time, where you get people like I've had stream snipers. I've had people call me an elitist, call out my personal life. And it doesn't happen often. I would say this is like less than a percentage in my personal messages, but it still happens. You get people that get very upset about cheating and ruining the game. Like, 4 people killing 30 people is ruining the game. And if you have some concept of how the game works, you know why it happens that way. You know, like, there's so much skill involved in this game, from a beginner player to an end game player. A lot of people just like to muddy it up, like, oh, there's not much skill. There is, between the average player and like an end game, like a very good end game PvPer, there's a huge amount of skill. Add in like the knowledge for builds, you can get very large advantages versus groups of players, because frankly, they gatekeep information. They tell you not to listen to players like them. They tell you to listen to them, and then they provide garbage information. So you're running a suboptimal build with suboptimal skill layouts, with suboptimal gear, food, enchants, different traits, whatever. And all of a sudden, those little percentages, 0.5% here, 0.5% here, 1% here, 1% here. And then you get the disparity of the actual skill level. And all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, my entire world is crashing around my fucking head because I thought I was a god at this game, and I just got 1v6'd. I got killed by one person in a group of 6. How could this happen? Oh, that fucker is cheating. That's what happens.
Characteristic of a toxic casual, they use double standards. They utilize their lack of a basic understanding of the game, and whether intentional or not, they don't see the sheer ridiculousness of their stances. But it works to their strength, because all of this is backed up by community and the concept of toxic positivity as well, which seeks to not just gather support of the players, but also to gather the support of the circumstances or even the devs of the game if possible. So 2 examples here. Let's look at fake tanking. Why is it that fake tanking or fake healing a fucking random normal dungeon is seen as toxic? Why is that? Why is it so that new players...
I did a video on this.
Oh, those poor new players. Or better yet, why is it that when healers or tanks fail to meet certain expectations, they are expected to meet specific standards, whereas the DPS aren't? If you have low DPS, or you just light attack or die or whatever, that's okay. You're learning, oh, it's perfectly acceptable for a random fucking normal. This is just another case, again, of the majority being the toxic casuals, yet again within the role context that basically can be summed up as rules for thee, but not for me.
Yep.
Yet again. There
100%.
have been far, far more players who've told me and other people in the ESO community or even the YouTube comments on my video that when they were trying out tanking as a new player or something, they got accused of fake tanking. So they got turned off from tanking, but that's okay. It must have been the toxic leaders or something, right? The funniest thing about this example actually is that Gilliam, the rogue, who is now one of the combat devs for ESO, talked about this weird idea of fake tanking these toxic casuals have a fascination with a few months ago. And his opinion is legitimately actually smart. It's intelligent in regards to the nature of a group finder, the philosophy of the game as a whole, and so forth. I agree with it wholeheartedly. But guess who didn't like it and frothed at the mouth? The toxic casuals. It's so hilarious to me that play how you want doesn't apply when they don't want you to play how you want. Everything must be defined, constricted, restricted by their terms to the point where, isn't that kind of toxic? I don't know. I think even endgame players putting a DPS spec on a main tank for VAS hard mode or VAA are a lot more open-minded than these toxic casuals. The second example of the double standards and claims of the betterment of the ESO fam actually hurting the minority communities is the tragedy of the PvP community, or the tattered dog water remains of it, and this plays into what I've learned and want to avoid, as I'll discuss later on.
But it sucks in the last like couple years how much I've had to myself see, like me and my community, we're treated like shit, like honestly.
After all these years.
I see Fangrush back, even if it's only a clip from 3 months ago.
Across the board. And rightfully, some people are assholes. And because you guys get angry, I get it. But it sucks seeing people get angry and no solutions come in, and then they're like, man, fuck those PvP people. You know? And in my last couple years, I've tried to tell people to, like, be chill. Don't go, especially don't attack the devs and stuff. Like, they're not bad people. They're really not. Like, working with some of the devs and meeting them have been really good times as well. Gina's been the best community manager I've ever seen in any game. It's not even close. But it sucks seeing such a cool community, a large part, like a lot of my community, just treated like, now I'm not saying like Xanax comes in souls, but because they don't like attack them. But I think we all know it's almost like, oh, here come the PvPers, nothing good to say.
Yep.
A bunch of assholes. If you go in the forums, it's PvEers, and they're like, this is a PvE game, dude. Fuck off, PvPer. You should know you're not going to get anything. Like, I don't know what the point is of even trying to support the game's PvP at this point, is what I'm getting at. It's such a toxic relationship that's been created. If you bring up stuff about PvP as a content creator, and other content creators that do PvP will echo the same sentiment that I am now. It's just not, you're not treated well. Like, you're looked at as like a complainer. And it's part of why we don't get any, we don't get much either.
So for those of you who don't know Fangrush, he is...
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. PvP stuff. We can talk about some PvP stuff. He's not wrong. Fangrush is not wrong in this case, because yeah, it happens all the time. I don't know if I'm gonna share this or not, but I had a comment on one of my videos 3-4 months ago, and this happens all the time. But for those of you guys that know, I've always preached balance in PvP. I want to go into this and I want to start here at the beginning. Balance. What is balance? Balance is trying to find a way to make each class functional and viable in its own unique and individual way. Its goal is to give players the tools in their toolkit to compete against other classes, other builds, other specs in their own unique ways. So whether you cloak, purge, streak, put on shields, heal, whatever. You have your ways of survival. You have your ways of damage that are unique to you and viable and allow you to compete with other players. That hasn't always been the case. We all know this. If you've dueled or you've played against other players, there have been times where as a mag DK, if you ran across a Templar like a couple years ago, you were literally just going to fight until one of you said, hey man, do you want to stop? Like, do you want to stop dueling? Because you're purging off all my dots and I just don't have enough burst to kill you. And the Magplar's like, yep, I don't have an unblockable stun. I can't CC you through your block. And so I can never get my burst off because you're holding left trigger the entire time. This is a couple years ago. But even like DKs versus necromancers. DK dots are reduced in 2 different ways by necromancers. Number one, actually 3 different ways, potentially even 4. Number one, they have the dot passive. It's 15% reduced dot damage. So already mitigating the main thing that DKs have, right? Reduced dot damage. They also have 10% mitigation from Spirit Mender. And then you also have a skill like Mortal Coil, which just literally mitigates 1 or 2 dots in and of itself. Just that one free skill, if you have 1 or 2 dots on you, it counteracts those. Like, you just don't die from a couple of dots with that. And finally, they also have a Purge. So if all of that isn't enough on a Necromancer, you can slot Purge. And so you have these encounters. And like one of the guys in my Discord, he was dueling my Necromancer with a Stam DK, and he's like, bro, like, you're just a really good Necromancer. And it's like, no, man, I'm a Necromancer. That's just what this kid is. You're doing nothing wrong. You're playing fine. I just have an advantage because of the class that I'm running. And so I'm not saying like I wouldn't have won otherwise, because I mean, come on, I'm just kidding. Some specs just aren't built very well and they need help. And so I try to talk about those on my channel. I try to show examples of where things are missing and why things are missing, and like what could be done to make that more enjoyable. Because I don't care if I win or lose. I really don't in PvP. I want to lose because the player is better than me. He has a better build, or, you know, just in general, because I'm outnumbered or whatever. I don't want to lose due to performance issues. I don't want to lose because literally I just have no chance. Like there's just sometimes you just run across those setups or specific layouts that you just can't do anything about on certain classes. Magdens, are you there? Can you hear me? Mag blades for like the last two or 3 years. Can you hear me? Like, these sorts of things are things that I like to talk about. Now, the reason I talk about them is the more builds that exist, the more different ways there are for people to have fun. Like, if you want to play a certain spec, you can play a certain spec. You can transition to a different build, different layout. The more viable builds that are out there, the better PvP is, because it's not like you're always running across 30-man werewolf groups or Harmony Necromancers or 10-man bombers with 10-man healers right behind them. Like, it's not the same stuff every single patch. Like, people get bored of metas because the metas are so strong in that one direction. If it wasn't so heavily skewed towards a few classes or a few build layouts, it would be more diverse and people wouldn't be as upset about like, oh man, I'm really tired of this Fury New Moon meta. Yeah, because you're running Fury and New Moon on everything. I'm really tired of this proc meta. Yeah, because you're running the same procs on everything. Like, oh, I wonder what class my Vatishran's Destro is going to wear today, with Malakath, with Zon, with the BRP Inferno. I wonder what class I should run all these sets on today. Because that's what was the meta at the time, and it was fucking busted. And so we can go through all these different things, and we can see these issues and how people get excited about running those builds, but then when everybody's running them, you get bored, because why wouldn't you get bored of running the same shit for like months on end, right? Now, with all that in mind, I have always said these adjustments can happen through Battle Spirit, and PvP and PvE should be kept separate. They should be 2 separate things. So when I'm talking about issues for PvP, I don't care if Zon hits for 150k against the Bloodspawn boss in a normal dungeon. I really don't care. I don't care if a fireball shoots out of your chest and just decimates everything in front of you in a dungeon. I really don't care. Run what you want. It doesn't matter. But when stuff like that comes into PvP, it becomes toxic, It's busted, it's broken, and it is frankly just not fun to play against. It is not fun to play with after a while because you get bored. It gets very, very boring. All these metas get boring because they're so heavily skewed. I've talked about this a lot, and I know a lot of you guys are like, dude, get through this already. And I get it, but I have to talk about it again because I get comments like this. I had a guy write, what was it, 5 or 6 paragraphs on my wall, and I was very curious about it because it was a very long post. And he basically like looked up the history of quote unquote free damage. He's like, yeah, the developers have been talking about free damage with proc sets, and they've been talking about this, and I've been looking around where the free damage thing came from, and I found out it came from you. You're the first person that has ever talked about free damage, and I wanted to let you know that you have ruined my build in PvE, and this didn't need to happen, and you're a terrible person that only cares about yourself and all these other things. Super, super toxic. And I'm reading and I'm like, man, if you, and I comment, like I said more than what I'm going to say here, but I'm like, dude, if you did all this research figuring out where this came from, you would know that I have preached keeping PvE and PvP separate. You would know this, and you didn't. You're upset because your crutch got nerfed. You're upset because your crutch got adjusted. I'm sorry it happened that way. I didn't want it to happen for you, but I did want it to happen in PvP because it's busted in that specific situation. And it happens all the time. Not always 6 paragraphs, but I will read patch notes. Hello, patch note guy. And I will talk about, we'll go through the changes, and people will be like, oh man, see, this PvPers are nerfing my fucking carry set, you assholes. Like, dude, like, we can acknowledge that this is broken in this department, but if I had it my way, you could still have this set in PvE. I really don't give a shit. Like, I really don't care. It's just busted over here. In the same sense that if all of a sudden you have necromancers busted in PvE and everybody's running a 12-man necromancer group, yeah, that's probably a little busted over there. And so if all of a sudden everybody's running crit modifier sets in PvE and they nerf crit to where like the base crit chance in PvP is like 10 to 12%, I think we could argue like, yeah, I can sit here and I can confidently say like, yeah, crit modifier is probably a little busted in a PvE situation. But we have battle spirit. You could have given us like 12% crit chance is just way too low. 10% crit chance is way too low. We did not need that change on our end. We did not need that change because now, I mean, unless you're a Nightblade or like a Magplar, you're probably running Malakath because you're shoehorned into Malakath. You would love to run one of these other mythics, but Malakath is the best one. And it's been the best one for most classes for over a year now. And you would be kind of silly to run outnumbered PvP with a suboptimal build. So most people run Malakath. Yeah. My long story short is you get it, like, as a content creator, you get it all the time. I'm sure everybody that comments on patch note changes or they talk about different skill sets and abilities, you get people that get upset about this. You're ruining the game for us. You're ruining this game with your PvP stuff. I said I was taking a break from ESO in October because I literally couldn't log on. And somebody was like, good, fuck PvPers. and I found, like, I would go to comment on other people's walls and he would be on there too. Fuck PvPers, just to everybody. And it's like, dude, I'm sorry, but is this your enjoyment, is to go on YouTubes of people you don't like to say stuff like this? Because that's crazy. Come on.
Lefty Lucy and King Richard.
Yeah.
He left ESO.
Those are the days.
Very recently. I was quite sad about it, and it's amazing that he stuck out for as long as he did. But something resonated with me when he said what you just listened to. The feeling of being told to leave ESO, the feeling of being alienated. You know, a lot of people at this point in the video, they're gonna fucking post stupid comments asking me to go touch grass or why I'm so passionate about a video game, but one, that tells me more about you than it does me, especially if you're watching this video, and two, when you've put the amount of time into ESO like Feng Rush or I have building our communities, building relationships, meaningful relationships, or whatever.
Yep.
It's your home and family, man. It's your home. And the feeling of being told to leave your home, the feeling that you don't belong there, or that you're a stranger in your own house, the feeling that the majority of players not liking you or thinking you're some sort of toxic pest that needs to go away, it fucking sucks. And I've experienced it. We've all experienced it. So I'm sure these fucking toxic casuals that tell raiders to stop existing, or PvPers that ESO is not a PvP game, was one of the many factors in why FangRush and many other players felt like they just needed to go. And it's not even that. The toxic casuals also use this weird toxic positivity in defense of the game's issues to gaslight people who both love and critique the game. Like, oh my god, Nefas criticized crown crates or the bugs in trials, he must fucking hate ESO. So why is this guy here? Wow, dottzgaming or Ness ESO said, PvP needs a performance fix? Fucking stop complaining and be grateful, you PvP shitters. All of this is an attempt to portray endgame players or specific content creators who lean towards the endgame as bad for not just the community, but for the game. And who wants a bad game, right? No one wants a bad game. I don't want a bad game. You don't want a bad game.
Correct.
Yet, this is another effective tactic that continues to work. And yet another issue for us, because these toxic casuals like to portray all of us as one big happy ESO fam, as they say on Twitter. So if we step out of line, we're fucked. And they refer to all of us as the ESO community. Like we're united. Fuck no, we're not.
There's
united.
a murder that
Real
just happened over
families
here.
and communities.
I'm sorry, there's a murder that happened right here. And Nefas is not talking about it. Like, what the hell, Nefas?
Don't do this shit to each other. Don't try to oust each other or suppress one another.
He's gone.
We're never united. But maybe we can try now that all this shit is laid out and in the open. Because we need to recognize that there is a problem in order to solve the problem. Before I talk about the potential solutions and the messages I have for my fellow endgame players, the neutral casual or whatever kind of player there are, and the piece of shit toxic casuals, I want to explain why I'm talking about this now. The reason I'm talking about this now is because I've been held back from discussing this because of the things I just covered. The toxic positivity, fucking multiple people who aren't even endgame players telling me, hey, you can't talk about your opinion because that's just going to divide the community further. You have a responsibility as a content creator. Oh, you're just overreacting, Nefas. It's just you who's being attacked. It's normal to get death threats and told your decades worth of serious mental illness is fake by these toxic casuals, or that it's not actually a lot of players.
Fuck this guy.
Fuck all of that bullshit, because these toxic casuals are getting bolder. There's more of them by the day, despite, me trying to be moderate about this shit. This is gonna be my first and last video, by the way, talking about this nonsense, because I'm done, man. They keep calling us toxic, and we're just minding our own business. These fucks don't know what real toxicity is at all.
Correct.
It takes away from the real toxic shit that happens, or fucked up shit that happens in the game, like sexual fucking harassment, stalking, doxing, forcing and passing nudes, fucking pedophiles, by the way. But do they talk about that shit?
Yep.
No, because they don't care about the fucking community. They just care about themselves. So I just want to point people to this video in the future if they ever need an explanation of what I mean by toxic casual, or what's wrong with the ESO community. Recognizing and fighting toxic casuals and how prevalent they really are is really important. And I'm going to use this video as a point in time to see if there will be any improvements at all, at least on our end. This part of the video is both a message to the actual, chill ESO casual players or beginners or non-endgame players, and also the final explanation of how toxic.
Okay.
It's not actually a lot of players.
So, I follow Nefas on Twitter, and he posted a really good post about what's going on in his life. And it was a very personal thing, really talked about, bared his soul, basically. And this guy was like, hey, you don't know what you're talking about. You're full of shit, which is just fucking crazy to me. Like that is absolutely crazy to me that you could have such an opinion on somebody you don't know. Like I'm not saying you should 100% believe anybody or anything like that, but you don't have to do this. Like, if you don't believe Nefas because Nefas is like, you think he's an asshole, fine, go about your fucking day. But don't do this. Don't do this right here. This is stupid. And this person, if you find yourself on this channel, you're stupid. And I'm speaking it from my chest, okay? You are an idiot for posting like this. And I even commented on it in here, like, this is just really dumb. But yeah, this stuff happens all the time, and it happens to everybody. And I can't tell you how many different times, like, I've gotten comments on my channel where like I want to share with you guys my favorite ESO YouTuber commenter. My favorite person is, I will post a video, and I will post a video with gameplay in the background, showing or showcasing what I'm talking about. And I'll just provide my point of view, right? Guys, if you disagree with me, there's nothing wrong with that. You're entitled to your disagreements. We're different people. We're different players. We have different thresholds for what we believe is overtuned and not. My beliefs aren't necessarily your beliefs, but I'll talk about a video. I'll talk about specific things, and it's just a thought. And it's just like, hey man, like, we should have a discussion, because I like talking about the game. I enjoy playing the game. I enjoy talking to players about it. It helps me change my opinion on things, because sometimes I am wrong. Sometimes I get things wrong, and hearing feedback from other players allows me to calibrate myself. It allows me to re-center myself and figure out, like, hey man, I'm way off on this. Like, my vigor math is so far off here. Thank you for helping me out. I was wrong. But people will go to those videos where it's just like, hey, like, this is what I see. This is my point of view. And people will comment and they'll go, hey man, quit crying, get out of here. And the cognitive dissonance to go onto a video where people are just having a conversation. Like, I don't know if they realize it, but to me, it's hilarious, because it's like, how thin of skin do you personally have to perceive that discussion as crying? Like, is that crying to you? Like, when you do that, do you think that that's crying? Like, just having a discussion, like talking about something that happens in game, that is so, like, that's crying to you? I don't know. It cracks me up, because it's just like, dude, you are Charmin paper thin sensitive. And I like, it's crazy. So yeah.
And also the final explanation.
We're
of
almost
how
to the video,
toxic
guys.
casuals work.
Hopefully you're enjoying this.
I want to talk about how the toxic casuals gatekeep, because a gatekeeping role is traditionally reserved for the elites or the elitists, right? But in reality, it's these elitists like me who have provided mountains and treasure troves of information, from ESO logs to understanding how the game works, from builds to written guides, from teaching raid leads to teaching raiders. I mean, we have over 16,000 people in the goddamn ESOU Discord. We're the third largest Discord, and all of the endgame players there share what they have with anybody. We answer everybody's questions, even score pushers. Score pushers have started sharing what their strats or setups are during the patch, which is fucking unprecedented and mind-boggling, because in the past, that shit was hush-hush. Now there are discords that just pug and let anyone raid. There's real effort in welcoming anyone, really, and we never had all this shit back then. But there's a lot of us who have experienced people looking down on us or treating us like shit when we first started out or whatever. This experience isn't the same for everybody. Some of us persevere and keep going. A lot more get put off and don't try anymore. So the behavior of these toxic casuals, as we've discussed before in the video, in encounters with so many people, and of course with the bullshit they spread on the forums or Facebook groups about what endgame players are really like, despite having never met one probably, of course deter a lot of newer players from trying or wanting to try, because why risk the journey if the destination is worse, right? These toxic casuals, in part, have created this culture of ESO players fearing failure, afraid of making mistakes in group settings, afraid of getting ragged on or called out. And that's all understandable to a degree, but listen guys, they are fucking you in the ass. You paid for this game with your money, or maybe your parents' money, who knows, doesn't matter. It's your world, it's your home, it's your content. Don't
Yeah.
let these fucking toxic casuals determine what you want or should do. Don't let someone else ruin the power of your MMO fantasy. Don't let someone else ruin your precious game time. And endgame players don't care if you solo, optimize, do dungeons or PvP or what. Just play. And don't let someone mislead you into a pit of irrational thinking. Just remember, everyone before you and after you have or will fail at some point. It's okay to make mistakes. The best players have and continue to make mistakes.
Yep.
It's okay to look bad. It's okay to be bad. Just keep going and you'll be fine.
You get better after the mistakes you make.
Now I'm going to talk to my
100%.
peers in the endgame community.
Okay. Hold on. Before Nefas talks to me, I wanted to talk to you guys. I'm just kidding. Yeah, he's 100% right here. And I if you guys want to share your perspective on this, I'd love to hear your comments of experiences you've had in this situation where you felt pressured to run a certain way. Because I know it happens. I'm gonna call it out right now. For a couple of years, while I was doing ESO content, I stayed away from the strongest classes. I stayed away from the strongest classes on the strongest specs most of the time. And it wasn't, okay, so there's a few things. Like, I've never been a huge fan of proc sets, so if proc sets are the strongest, I just naturally don't really, I'll run them for a little bit, and then I get bored and I just go back. Like, I can't play them for very long, typically, but I do play them. But there's some classes, like when the Warden came out, I don't think I touched the Warden for the first year to year and a half it came out. Like, I made my characters, I leveled them, I did some PvE on it, and I never went into PvP because it was so busted. And it was like every time I watched Warden content, people were like, oh yeah, you're on a Warden. And I was like, well, I don't want that. Like, I want to like provide content with skill and all these other sorts of things. And I had these players, these comments stop me for running stuff that I wanted to run. And I honestly really liked the Warden. Like, I liked how the Warden looked. Like, the nature thing was really cool, but it was busted. It was really busted. And so, yeah, you get a lot of people like, oh man, I can't believe you're running this. If you go watch King of Games has made videos on this a few years ago. He was running a Warden, and he's like, I'm back on the Stam sword because everybody's talking shit about me running Warden again. It's like, dude, if you want to play Warden, you should run fucking Warden. If you want to cheese it up with whatever, cheese it up. Like, it's okay. And I realized that probably way longer than it took me too long to realize it myself. But like when Necromancer came out and I was playing it on the PTS, I really enjoyed it. And at that point in time, Magcrow was way stronger than Stamcrow, and I was enjoying Stamcrow a lot. And I was like, I don't care if this is the most busted class when it first comes out. Hint, it was. Like, the Bashcrow was. But I was like, I'm going to play this class. I don't give a shit. I enjoy this class. I've been doing this for years. I am not going to stop. Nobody's going to stop me from running the classes that I want to run. If I want to run whatever, I'm going to run it. I'm going to play what I want. I'm going to get the most enjoyment that I want. And this holds a lot of people back, guys. Like, some people want to run off meta healers. Like, they want to run like Mag DK healer or like Mag Blade or whatever. Like, not the traditional Warden or Templar healer. They want to run other things. They want to run a tank as something else, or they want to run Sword and Board 2H Nightblade. Like, they want to run different things, and they don't do it because you have people who are like, oh yeah, don't do that, you're garbage if you do that. And it's crazy. And you see it a lot. You see quite a few people get restricted in that way. It's just, it sucks to say, but it's like, it's a freaking game. Like, I can cheese it up on a cheesy build, and I can be like, yeah, this build is cheese. It took no skill to do. It was fun though. Like, that's all the preface you need to run something. Like, guys, I like this. This is fun for me. Yes, it's really strong. No, I'm not going to run weak things. I'm going to run strong setups. Yes, this should be adjusted, but I'm not going to not run it. Like, yeah. Anyways, I'll hop off my soapbox here.
Community, because we have to talk about solutions.
Okay.
What the toxic casuals have done and continue to do may look quite dire for us, and it's commonly said whenever us raiders, start talking about this, that we are a very small minority, very small. But this can change. I'm going to admit something that perhaps some may already know, maybe more have suspected for some time in the past 1.5 years. One of my biggest focuses has been not just content creation for ESO, but also the normalization and construction of endgame. This is why I went for Twitch partner to create the Hard Mode stream team. I'm proud to say we've seen quite a few others from the Hard Mode stream team get Twitch partnership like Skinny, Airy, Aleph, and more, but we've actually helped change the nature of the ESO Twitch directory. 2 or so years ago, you wouldn't see many raiders stream besides me and J-Dub. Now, it's normal, so normal. Now there's more people and more teams streaming, raiding in the ESO Twitch directory. There's more YouTube content made by endgame players apart from myself. There's more guides, there's more knowledge. We have more websites now like ESOU, the 10 Club. We have better communal networking in Discord or in-game. We have finally had endgame players show up on the official Bethesda stream when we did the QuakeCon dungeon competition this year. We are gaining ground, and we've gotten some victories, but they're not enough. Rating retention has always been historically low, and a large part of it definitely has to do with the nature of the game and the lack of a basic reward structure, both temporary and perennial, but it's also in part because of the toxic casuals, and it's time we start shifting even more focus on newer players for raids. Thankfully, some people, including the ESO Runs Discord server and Sub-Eternal, have started doing this more, as the old system of cannibalizing mid-tier teams for higher-end teams is outdated and no longer sustainable, particularly for the endgame progression teams. We have to beat the toxic casuals by disengaging with them, no longer arguing with them, no longer trying to convince them, no longer presenting facts or math or anything of the sort to people who've already made up their minds. No interaction at all. We must focus just on the players who matter. We've done wonderfully in transparency of information, but it's time we improve how we train new raiders, or new raid leads, and more importantly in making raiding enjoyable. Not just for newer players, but for ourselves to avoid burnout until more changes come to the game structure itself. We have to focus even more on building up our own guilds or communities and begin coordinating even more with each other across different platforms and servers in the future, towards the common goal of gaining an astronomical amount of interested players, as this will help us avoid a fatal mistake of the PvP community, which incorrectly focused on their veteran player base for events such as dueling tournaments or other events, rather than going for newer blood. Lastly, this part of the video is a message to the toxic casuals, because I'm sure some of you who have watched my content
they didn't make it this far,
or passed this video around to a degree,
they didn't make it this far.
Shut the fuck up, play the game, mind your own fucking business, you shit for brain cocksucking baboons. I hope you fucking get nothing but crown lethal poisons in your crown crates, and I hope your fucking character names get fucking name changed. I hope whatever semblance of RNGs left in ESO keeps fucking in the ass as much as possible. Stop blaming the endgame players for all your troubles. Go back to school, raise a family.
Wow, that's toxic. That's toxic.
If you do cock at the game, go try to improve like everybody else instead of blaming everybody else. If you're so worried about the community or the new players, go do something productive for them instead of yapping about it all the time. Stop fucking using new players as a fucking shield for your own insecurities. Thanks.
That was good. That was really good. Yeah, nobody's gonna make it here. Nobody's gonna make it this far. Just like nobody's gonna make it this far in this video. My idea for, well, I will be posting my video in probably the next few days. I gotta finish it up and everything. But yeah, toxic casuals are exactly who I will be addressing in my video. I just didn't have the terminology for it. So thank you, Nefas. This is a very good video. Really good video. I give it a D. Give it a D. It's about ESO, about toxic casuals and elitists. No, in all seriousness, this is a good video. And this is really well done. Really good points brought out. And you don't have to agree with all of it. Like, obviously, you guys are entitled to your opinion. But yeah, this is spot on. This happens all the time. And it sucks. Like, because it's typically like, it's not like these players are organized, but they have the same types of thoughts, right? They're the same types of players where they're not very good. And it could be a bunch of things. Like, they're somewhere in the middle, and they're probably crutching on something that's really strong, and they want to convince people that it's not strong, because they're not doing very well with it. And it never could be because of their actual skill level. It's always the game. It's always the game this, the game that, the game that. And you see it all the time, like across multiple things, PvE, PvP. Like, you have PvEers that talk about infused healthy glyphs on the helmet. You'd see PvEers talking about how you need to run lightning staff on the back bar for AoE because it's all your back bar stuff is AoE. But even when you show a parse of using a flame staff back bar and show how the VMA Inferno does so much damage with your light attacks that it outweighs those sorts of things in a lot of fights. And yeah, if you're running like an AoE spammable, using a lightning is still good. It just doesn't make any sense on specifically a mag DK. When you point that stuff out, they just end up shifting the blame, and yeah, it's just not enjoyable. Like, you can't debate that. It's fun to kind of talk about it. It's fun to bring it up and show to other people. But yeah, the main portion of what I myself and like what Nefas is saying here, or what he's going to try to do, is those players just don't matter. Like, they're not the majority. They're not. I mean, new players every single year are the majority. ESO does a really good job of bringing in new players. Those guys are the majority. And getting those players to enjoy the game, to play the game that they want, and regardless of platform, regardless of trials, endgame, whatever, is a good place to start. Getting them knowledgeable on the game, educating them, showing them the mechanics, showing them where things are a little off, and giving them a voice to speak to the devs is a much better way to go about doing things. Because if you argue, how does that old saying go? If you argue with an idiot long enough, people will forget who the idiot is. Like, that's basically what Nefas is saying here. You can't just continue to beat your head against the wall against people that refuse to learn or listen, or just ignorant and don't know. You have to just produce your content and move about your day. And so, yeah, I'm glad I did this review. If you guys enjoyed it, if you want to see more like this in the future, please let me know. I know this is a long one. Hopefully you guys are doing like a car ride to go, party on New Year's or something. And, I didn't ruin your day listening to this. Listen to me ramble on about somebody else's video. But yeah, this is going to be a pretty big background cover for the video that I will be working on. It was kind of funny because I wasn't doing a definition and talking about toxic casuals, but this type of player is the type of player that I will be talking about in my future video. So I will be using the reference toxic casual, and I advise you all to do the same. I think just having the definition in and of itself will carry a pretty strong stigma to those that deserve it, and it should stop some of the vitriol that you will see. Like if you see these sorts of things, and yeah, I could see this in and of itself ending these types of debates, because people don't want to be labeled as a toxic casual. Just like you don't want to be labeled as an elitist. This is Nefas literally flipping it on its head, labeling a group of people that do this, and I wouldn't be shocked if it had the exact same effects. So yeah, that's the end of this video. I love you guys. Thank you for staying. Have a good one. Take care.